Pranab, it's a pleasure to have you today. Would you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Dennis. This is Pranab Saha. I'm with Pranab Saha Engineers. This is a consulting company in the area of acoustics, noise, and vibration. And we started this company on November 1, 1986. After we formed our company, I soon became a member of SAE International. And there must have been something needed, because as I became a member, I also started participating in the Acoustical Materials Committee, which developed standards in the ground vehicle industry. And we have developed many standards for sound absorption, sound transmission loss, damping, both overburst bar, and we are working on a center point method, which are unique to the vehicle industry that is not covered by ISO or ASTM type standards. Very soon, I also started attending the noise and vibration conferences of SAE, which in my opinion are the best in the mobility industry. And I found in my job, as I did the work, I had to explain to the customers how I did it, why this method, why not something else. And I felt that the people did not know much about acoustics, and therefore it would be a good idea if we can start offering trainings and seminars for my customers and others in the mobility industry, so they can learn everything in an organized way. And SAE International helped me to do that. So I have been involved with that, and in 2021, I was rewarded with several recognitions, awards. One of them is the Medal of Honor, which is SAE's highest level award. The other one is Ralph K. Hillquist Lifetime NVH Award, which I'm very grateful to have that, because that's what I have done all my life. And also I was able to publish my book, and SAE International is the publisher, and they were very kind to work with my schedule and allowed me to have the book published.
If you talk about Pranab Saha, so you said it was started in the 80s. It's been a long time, so I imagine that things has evolved a lot. So what is the biggest change from what you've been doing 40 years ago and what you're doing now today?
When we started in 86, at that time the automotive industry was very different than what it is today. In those days, there were 3 or 4 acoustics labs in the Metro Detroit area, which was the hub of the automotive industry in North America. We had an acoustics lab, or access to the acoustics lab, and there were only 2 or 3 other companies. But changes were coming. Changes were coming because the OEMs did not want to do all the work themselves. They wanted to make sure that the suppliers are responsible not only for the parts, but the acoustics of that part. So they wanted to make sure that all results, supplier cannot do it. They can go to an independent lab who otherwise don't have any interest on those parts. That's how we got into our arena niche area. At the beginning, we did a lot of vehicle level studies and to understand how the noise comes into the vehicle, how different parts work, whether a laminated body panel will be beneficial in terms of acoustics or not. But gradually, as the OEMs started challenging the sound package material manufacturers to have their own capability to design parts and things like that, some of these companies, they also started developing, building their own acoustics labs. In many cases, we have helped them develop the acoustics labs. In many cases, we specialized being an independent lab to test many different materials and certify that to the OEM. In many cases, we work with individual suppliers so that their products can meet the target. Otherwise, there will be a challenge. In some of these works, as I mentioned before, that I also provided a lot of training. I had the opportunity to go to many different countries to offer seminars and training. And today, we not only conduct measurements for sound package materials, we also have developed some automated systems for making measurements, which can be done unattended, so that the customer, they can make multiple measurements in a short period of time.
Very interesting. If we go back a little bit more, where did you study?
I was born in India. After doing my undergraduate, I came to United States. I was at University of Florida, did my master's, and then I went to Georgia Tech to do my PhD. At Georgia Tech and in many other universities, they do not have a degree in acoustics. So my discipline was mechanical engineering, but I did my thesis in sound propagation from an electric transformer, power transformer. So from that then on, I started working in acoustics. I started working since 1978, and essentially from day one, I was in the vehicle type acoustics work. One of the things that people who are brought up in Asian countries, one of the things is very critical is education. Not that it doesn't happen in the Western world, but in the Eastern countries, because the job market is very tight, therefore the emphasis is a lot on education and less on hands-on doing things. So my thing was not that different, but once I got the opportunity to work in this field, I realized that I can do simulation, I can do measurements, but what I really enjoy is doing things that are more practical, not so much equation related, but something I can explain to others very easily, so that conceptually we can understand how materials work, why they work that way, and how these things can be changed if there is a need.
Right. Just coming back to your childhood, what would be your favorite childhood memory?
My favorite childhood memory would be I used to play soccer. I used to play cricket. I don't participate in those anymore, neither do I watch the games anymore, but those were the fun days that I really cherish.
Nice. And do you have any funny stories that your family like you to say about you when you were a kid?
I remember at one time I was a child, I went to my uncle's house and I stayed there for a few days. And you may know that the Indian people, their food is typically spicy food. And I, with all due respect to my uncle and my aunt, the food they made didn't have enough spice. So very different. I came back home, my mother asked, so what did you have for food? How did you like the food? I said, Mom, your food is much better. It has, this one didn't have anything. I laugh now because in my life today, I cannot have spicy food anymore. My body also would not accept it anymore. But interesting, when you live in an environment, you are growing up with spicy food, you like it, and if somebody doesn't have it, you ask what happened. And now that's the food I like the most.
Yeah, that's a very nice story. What is the nicest trip that you have done when you traveled? What's the one that really filled you with joy and bliss?
I had actually the opportunity to travel at many different places. And the two that I remember the most, the first one would be during the first Gulf War. I went to Germany. I went there essentially for a 5-minute presentation. That's the way it was presented to me, that Pranab, we would like to send you to a conference, to a meeting for a 5-minute presentation. But as long as we're going there, it's up to you if you want to stay a little bit longer and enjoy the rest of the conference as well as see the country. So that was very interesting and enjoyable. I went to Stuttgart and I had to take a train from my hotel to a restaurant that I wanted to go for dinner. And I remember I had to ask some young kids about direction. They all knew English, but they were hesitating to speak because they were trying to correct their grammar, is versus are, and things like that. And I told them, please don't worry, just tell me, I will understand. But what it did to me, I realized in India, the same thing used to happen to me and many other people. We all learned English since we were a kid, but we never spoke English.
Yeah.
So when we had to speak, now we are correcting our grammar. We are hesitating.
Exactly.
So once I told these high school kids that don't worry, they felt comfortable and we were able to communicate. I liked that very much. And the other one that I liked was, I think, my last trip to China. I was fortunate to be able to go there 5 times, 5 years in a row. And every time I went there, somebody showed me part of the country. The last one I went, I wanted to make sure that I get the chance to go to Beijing and see the Great Wall.
Yeah.
And that was really a very good trip and a tour. I have hired a tour guide and she was really good to help me make sure that I get to see everything that I want to see.
If you could have a coffee with someone from the past that has passed away, today, but someone that you would like to have a discussion with?
I think the person who helped me to get to where I am today, I have to say, was my boss who hired me. He is Jim Groening. He used to work at General Motors in the noise and vibration area. Then he was tired of that. He wanted to do something different. So he came into the consulting business. And in '78, he hired two young engineers. One is myself and one is Rick Calano, who is my partner today. And I have to give a lot of credit to Jim, although he hesitated a long time whether to hire or not. But once he hired me, he made sure and gave me opportunities, things that I wanted to do in addition to just work. Because I wanted to be able to have publications. I wanted later to be able to provide trainings and seminars. And he gave me those directions, whom to talk and how to get there.
If we look at your book, as we said, your book is really practical, and that is something that I appreciate. A lot of pictures, a lot of graphs, so a lot of illustration of the concepts that you described in the book. Who is the book addressed to?
The book is addressed to different levels of technical staff, and they don't have to be even technical staff, as long as they are all working on sound package materials. To me, an engineer who is working on sound package materials needs to know some things so that they make sense. They are more practical. If you look at an acoustics book, a typical acoustics book, it gives you all the equations, and most of the examples would be of an architectural acoustics or HVAC noise or room acoustics. Right. But there are only very few books that has the applications from the vehicle industry. And that's what I wanted, so that you have a general idea how materials work in the vehicle industry, how you can improve the performance of the material, and how you can tune the performance of the material. So it talks about the basics of acoustics, but it always tries to give application from the vehicle industry. At least that's the goal. That's what I tried to do, and I hope that that has been successful. Also, somebody who is not a technical person, but buying materials or in the purchasing department, or they're in the business development department, they need to know some parts of acoustics. Otherwise, they will not be able to do their work properly. So in the beginning of the chapter, it talks some things in a simple way, and then it goes to a little bit more detail. And as I say, that chapter 8 of the book is the kernel of the book. It gives you all the case studies that you can envision, you can think of, at least many of the case studies, with examples, with graphs and photographs.
Now you've seen the evolution of NVH in automotive, in material characterization, in material use, and material manufacturing also, that changed a lot in 40 years. How do you see the world of acoustic materials in cars with the with the electric vehicles being more and more popular, and new materials that are actually starting to pop up here and there. How do you see the world of NVH in, let's say, 5 years and then in 50 years?
I want to go back a little bit if I can.
Sure.
This would be the early 80s or so, when unibody construction vehicles started coming into the market. A new material was developed. The material still existed in the acoustics industry, but it was not used in the automotive industry until the unibody construction vehicle came into the picture. That material is the damping material.
Mm-hmm.
The damping material, everybody knew about what it does, what it did, what it can do. But in the automotive industry, in the vehicle industry, in the mobility industry, it did not come into the picture until the unibody construction vehicle came into the picture. With that said, around that time, we all evaluated a product based on measurements. What have happened since then, about 20 years ago, started the simulation, the analysis part became very critical, very advanced, and we have progressed a lot. So now we not only can make measurements, but we can predict what the performance is going to be and then validate those things through measurements. The thing that I'm going to suggest to everyone, that you need to have an understanding of both measurements and simulation. Because if you only know simulation and do not understand or do not do much of the measurements till at the end, we possibly will be in big trouble. Because at that point, if the measured data does not match the simulated data, the predicted data, what do we do?
It's dangerous to simulate without having a background in testing, because you need to have a feeling for the realistic character of the results.
Correct. With electric vehicles, things are not anything different, because there are a few companies who have been making internal combustion engines for the last 50 years, 100 years. They have a well-established NVH group. The new electric vehicle companies, they have limited amount of NVH people. They are relying a lot on simulation. Nothing wrong in that. That's a great thing that has to be there to make things work properly. But if they don't have the measurement background, which I think many of them lacks, then they have targets that are really not achievable. Just because it's a target, just because it came from theory, does not necessarily mean in manufacturing you can always manufacture that kind of parts, because everybody wins. So that's where I say that if the targets are not, if the specifications are not consistent, achievable, it becomes a very challenging thing.
And what do you think will happen in 50 years from now?
I will not be surprised if the simulation have been able to be at a level that your measurement requirements would be different. But I also think that the customer expectation is going to be different. We want more than what somebody can give us immediately.
Right.
And, you know, so we have to be able to balance those things properly.
Talking about simulation, you have joined recently dBPorous, and the users of dBPorous are mainly engineers, NVH engineers and acoustic engineers that are doing predictions, and what they want to do is to increase the level of accuracy of their simulations, and therefore they want to come to a place where they can gather accurate information, parameters of the acoustical materials that you're going to use in their simulation, and also the damping treatments. And what I would like to know from your opinion is why did you decide to join dBPorous?
I think one of the very positive thing of the dBPorous is, if I'm a member of that group, I have access to data that I need in one place, and therefore I can understand the benefits of one material over the other, all in one place. If I had to do that from supplier to supplier to supplier, everybody is going to tell me things slightly different, and therefore it becomes difficult at that point to judge which one really is the best thing for me. That's one aspect of the dBPorous that I really like. You have a consortium, you can share some information together, you have access to that information. The other part is what dBPorous is doing is taking that data, and now they're doing the simulation work for the application. So you can not only get the data, you can also get the simulation, you can also get the results for your particular needs, which is different from somebody else's needs and application. So you are getting both of those in one place.
What's the best way to find you on the web?
I'm in LinkedIn. So that may be a way to find me. We obviously have our Kalano and Saha engineers website. I think if you Google Pranab Saha, you will find it.